Stop having bad sex. Bad sex is anything that is not obviously consensual or is painful or is not completely pleasurable for you. Don't have it because the more you have it, the more your brain thinks this is my norm. This is all I can accept. This is all I can expect.
Welcome to Spark Me, a podcast for women who know life is just getting interesting.
Each week, we spark great conversations, share lived experiences, real resources, and tap into the collective wisdom that comes from learning together.
If you're looking for connection, not perfection, fresh ideas, and a community where you truly belong,
then pull up a chair. You're in the right place. Welcome to Spark Me.
Well, hello, Michele. Welcome back to Spark Me podcast. I am so excited about today's guest.
Liz, me too. So today we're diving into a topic that I think a lot of people are going to relate to because they're living inside of it, but almost none of us are talking about it. And that's intimacy and desire in long-term relationships and partnerships. This is the stuff that sits under the surface, right? It's in our marriages, and it's the questions that we're almost afraid to whisper, even to our closest friends.
Yeah, there can be so much shame and confusion and, sort of questioning of, is it just me? So we wanted to get right into it the way we do on this show.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're excited. We're so excited to have with us today Dr. Erin Murphy Ross, a marriage and family therapist and professional counselor who spends her days in real conversations couples are having. The messy, honest, complicated ones around sex, connection, and what happens when real life crashes into long-term love. Erin, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be able to share a little bit of what I do all day, but also hopefully help normalize some of this stuff for everybody. It's everywhere. It's with every relationship, every individual. So I'm excited to start talking. Thanks.
Well, Erin, we're so excited to have you. And, every day you're sitting in these conversations with people. And before we zoom into some of the details of intimacy and desire, we wanted to sort of start big picture. And because we know that some of our listeners are going to recognize themselves in so much of this topic. So when it comes to long-term relationships and intimacy, what would you say the question is that you hear the most in your practice?
Oh, goodness. Well, it usually starts with, is this normal? Am I the only one? Is this the worst thing you've ever heard? People don't want to feel alone in this area of their lives, but it's also very private. So what happens is it's a very important topic that often becomes taboo and silenced. And one of the biggest takeaways is just that A, you're not alone. B, if you're asking the question, somebody else has asked it already too. And three, then to try to figure out how to find your own healthy, right? What that looks like. And it doesn't have to look like what everybody else's looks like. And I think with sex and intimacy and relationships, we see a lot online. We see a lot in our media. We see a lot just with our friends and what we hear. Uh, and I'm here to say that that's not all true. And so, making sure that people feel heard and seen is incredibly important. Really the biggest takeaway, especially if it's individuals, I'm sorry, if it's couples, is that most couples aren't broken, they're overloaded. And so a
Hmm.
lot of the sex and intimacy concerns that they have stem from so many other external factors and issues.
Like what, Erin? Like, what are some of those issues? Because I think this is something, like we said, that because it's so personal, because even in friendship groups, I think
Mhm.
people are, I'll tell you everything about me, but I don't feel you maybe necessarily I should be telling you things about, somebody else, right? And that I care about.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes we're even with close friends, maybe one-on-one we're talking about it, but not in groups, and maybe
Mhm.
not even one-on-one sometimes. So what are some of the things right now that could be affecting that you're seeing affect that long-term intimacy and desire?
Well, for one, right now, and for always, is stress. Stress
Mm.
is a libido killer. for anybody, male or female. It doesn't matter. We have a lot of stress in our lives right now in in our world. It's an understatement, and I think that I don't want you to underestimate the power that that has on how you feel, um, intimately, sexually, relationally. Even a lot of times, it's just easier to not talk, not discuss, not argue, not fight. It's just an energy sucker. And so stress is always at the top of that list. But also, depending on your age, there's parent child dynamics, there's raising kids, there's job stress, there's scorekeeping, there's lack of sleep, there's hormone imbalance in terms of just the physical issues that concern our libido and our felt level of intimacy. So it's kind of all over the place. It's widespread, which is why it's so important when I start working with individuals or couples to really understand what's going on in their life, not just to dive into, all right, well, let's figure out how we can improve libido. If that's a concern, or make you guys start talking, or whatever might feel a little bit more of a concern. I like to take it back at the beginning and say, okay, well, what else is going on in your life? Where are you at in life transitions? Where are you at in child rearing, child raising, childbearing? Where are you at there? Because there's just so much that's at stake.
And is that stress? Oh, I'm sorry, Liz. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's I was just gonna say, when you're having these, conversations with couples, do you do sessions where you speak to the, one spouse alone versus, separately, I guess, just to
Yeah,
get to some of the heart of that?
it's a great question because most of the time people are surprised to know that I do split you up at the beginning, especially if it's sex or intimacy concerns. One, I want to hear from you as an individual because that's where it begins. Each person is in a relationship individually first, right? And what that means is what you have on your plate as an individual, you bring into the relationship. And I want everybody to take ownership of that, but also understand that they can be heard as an individual with their own concerns. The other thing that I do is I always screen for any kind of domestic violence, any kind of sexual trauma. In or outside of your relationship. It doesn't mean that I am worried there's any of that going on in your relationship, but I want you to have the space to discuss anything that you feel is more private with me first. First and foremost is client safety and also that voice. And so most of the time, I'd say 99% of the time, I will split up a couple that presents for anything to assess them as individuals first. So yeah, absolutely, it happens every single time. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you if I've done that to you.
And are and the stuff excuse me, the stuff that they're bringing into those conversations. And you mentioned stress being one, and I imagine that stress impacts both men and women.
Oh yes.
Um, but then outside of the relationship, you said things that you're bringing into it, right? So can you talk about that a little bit? And is that something you're not just talking within the relationship, something that you like things that happened within your relationship? You're going back, right? Is that what you're
Yes.
saying? You're going back.
Back. I'm going back. And this doesn't mean you have to lay on my couch prostrate and tell me everything that happened in your childhood. So don't get stressed about that. It means that I like to connect dots and I like for people to feel like they can connect their own dots, right? And so essentially, how I start is by asking a person, who was your sexual role model? Sometimes this is done in front of your partner and sometimes it's done individually.
Yeah.
Um, but what I mean by that is not necessarily it always being a positive role model, but anybody that you look to understand how to be sexual, how to understand your own sexuality, how to understand physical touch, any demonstrative love, even, right? And the reason I ask that is because we all have an idea of who we are now, but sometimes we don't necessarily connect that who we are now to who we have been made to be. who we have learned to be. And so an example of that might be, oh, the truth is, I feel like maybe my parents were my sexual role model, but not necessarily in a good way. I never watched them uh, touch. I never heard them say, I love you. I just felt like when you got married, you just became parents, right? And so I just watched them through the years be cordial, but I always feel uncomfortable with touch, and maybe that's where it came from. I was never really hugged or kissed as a child. I know I was loved, but I didn't associate that. So that would be one example of a role model. Another one could be very traumatic. Um, Abuse and trauma come in there, and it's horrific, but it's important to connect those dots in terms of, hey, I'm having a hard time connecting now in my relationship, and I can't figure out why. He's or she's a really good person, and um, I don't know. I don't feel the desire. In those particular situations, it's important to connect those dots. And of course, those are two examples. Sometimes they're wonderful role models. And gosh, I love to hear that so much because it's such a huge, relevant part of our lives.
I don't know that I ever thought about the fact that you have, you're building out this history of sexuality before you even embark on sex,
Oh,
right?
yes.
That as a kid, everything from, what you're observing with your parents to what you're talking to your friends about to perhaps like if you come from a particularly religious family, all of those influences who you become as a sexual being later in life.
Oh yeah, it's tremendous. Even sexual communication, sexual language. What were the names given to genitalia in your household? Were you able to say anatomically correct words, or did you have other things that were mentioned? Right. And I always like to mention this because it's important. With kids, making sure that they know the right words is so important to their safety. It's so critical, because if they can't name it, sometimes they don't say it. And so, it doesn't mean that you can't have other language that you use in your household, but man, please let them know the anatomically correct. Because the other piece of that, it's not just safety, sometimes it's shame. I
Mm.
don't say those words because they're bad. I don't say those words because they're dirty.
Mm.
Again, that can follow you, right, into adulthood when it doesn't have to. There's nothing wrong with that. And the other thing that I do is I speak sometimes to parents about how to speak to your kids about sex. And I know that this is slightly off topic, but it there's a point. In that when I start that conversation with them, if I just talked to 40 parents a couple weeks ago about this. I always start with an exercise, and I say, "Okay, everybody, repeat after me: eyeball, elbow, vulva, penis, armpit," and of course that's what I get, right? It's weird. Why did I just do that? Why did I say why did I make you say that aloud? There's no difference, and they're all body parts.
Yeah.
And the difference is sometimes when we don't use the anatomically correct words, shame seeps in there, and then we don't want to say it. And then what happens is 20 years later, when we're in a relationship and we want to talk to our partner about pleasure or pain or discomfort, anything, we
Yeah.
don't want to talk about it because we don't even know what to say, right? We don't know that part of our body, or we don't know how to use that word. So it matters, right? Again,
Yeah.
connecting those dots.
Well, you just brought up shame, Erin. And does that show up differently for men and women? And what is the shame around? Is it around lack of a desire? Is it around performance? Like, what are you seeing in long term relationships, um, in terms of shame, carrying that when they come to you?
Yeah, I mean, the answer to your questions is yes, yes, and yes. It shows up differently. It can show up the same, but it can show up differently. It can be surrounding all of the things that you just said. It's so important to explore that and not assume that it fits for everybody, right? And also, I can't even assume that people understand what that means to them. What does shame mean? How do you
Right.
define that? Have you ever even used that word before?
Mhm.
So instead, I kind of look for it in how they talk about themselves or their relationship or a lack of, right? I don't have language. I don't know what to say. I so what it looks like, yes, just like you pointed out, Michelle, in all of those different areas, it can look like I don't have language. It can look like I feel like I did bad things according to the way that I grew up and how I understand. It can be shame in my sexual orientation. It can be shame in all different areas. It can also be shame in, I think I'm the only one that feels this way,
Mm.
right? And so going
Yeah.
back to that original conversation we had at the beginning about it doesn't really come up much, even with our friends, right? Because why? Because you have that one friend who's always going to, say, "Oh, we have sex 20 times a day and it's great and every time I orgasm and everything's perfect." And so that shuts everybody else up, right? Because
Mhm.
chances are really good nobody else at the table
Mhm.
is having sex 20 times a day. Um, and neither is she. Neither is she.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so it can look very different. And as a result, I have to address it differently. Um, Typically, men are going to be less inclined to communicate about shame than women are, even though it's
Mm.
very uncomfortable for both sexes. It matters differently to their lives in terms of how can I say what I need to say. And even though women talk about it more, still not a lot. Um, men don't really necessarily have the space all the time,
Yeah.
so it's harder to address even in therapy.
Erin, I just want to stop for a minute and let's just talk about you for a minute and how did you how did this become your career path? Because
Uh,
it's such an interesting choice, and I feel like, I mean, I don't know any other, therapists in this realm. So,
Yeah, there's not a ton of us. There are more than there used to be, which is phenomenal. But my road was a strange and bumpy one. I kept following my passions in life, which was something that I remember my dad told me a long time ago, which was find out what you love and then find out how to make money doing it. And so I started out as an undergraduate in communication studies, and I loved it. It wasn't typical marketing, advertising, media communications. It was relational in nature. We learned about why people relate to people the way they do, talk the way they do, think the way they do. It was fascinating for me. I didn't know what I was going to do with that, so I went to law school right afterwards, which was a big mistake for me. I'm married to an attorney, and I think it's great. He loves it. I did not. That's not how I wanted to help people, and so I found myself really distancing from this idea of I wanted to do family law and help families and couples, and that translated to something that I didn't really want to do, which was divorce and custody and things like that. Um, so I promptly dropped out of law school, proud law school dropout, and went back into communications work and got a master's degree back in communication studies. And I thought, you know what? This is what I love. I'm just going to teach. I'll go and work at a university one day, and that's what I'll do. But as I got into that work a little bit deeper and learned about deception theories and all this really cool stuff in terms of how we communicate the way we do, I found that I still couldn't apply it the way I wanted. I wanted to go out and talk to people and learn about people and their stories. And so I got another master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And that's where I found my happiness. I learned that I could connect with people and I was interested in them. But the more work I did, the more I realized I love couples work. Okay. Well, in couples work, you do a ton of sex therapy and you don't mean to sometimes, right? You're not, we're still, I don't think the programs train you very well. But I loved learning specifically about women's empowerment and sexuality and how when we have a voice as females, God, it goes really far. It's so good to watch a woman own that for herself and not be ashamed and be proud. And that's where my passion grew from. And so then I went and got my PhD in marriage and family therapy and specialize in sex therapy. and
Sex work.
yeah, I guess I
Yes.
should clarify that, right? Sex therapy. And I love what I do every day.
That's
That's
awesome.
great.
So, Erin, I think it's so interesting that you got into this line of work and probably immediately found out how necessary it is, like how people are probably craving what you do and feeling there was, I'm sure it was an unmet need, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so, first of all, is that true? Is that an unmet
Oh,
need?
it's 100% true. And
Yeah,
people and the truth is, once you get people talking about sex, they like to talk about sex for the most part, right? They wanna know.
sure.
Interesting.
It's my party trick when I go out with new couples or friends. They're like, "Now wait, what do you do? Oh,
Yeah.
what's your craziest story? Okay,
Yes.
here's my
Yeah.
situation," right? Everybody
This is
they
how I
like to
feel.
talk about it.
This is how I feel talking to you. I'm like, oh, this is so exciting. I have so many things I want to find out. Like, this is like, right? And so I'm going to get right to some of them, which is, there's, I think there's a general assumption out there that like men want sex more than women, or, which I don't find to be true at all. Right. And yet, when it comes to desire, and I'm sure in long-term relationships, I'm guessing, you can correct me anywhere I'm wrong, that anywhere I'm wrong, but that men, it might wane equally as much as women. And there might be issues with performance. And yet when I look on the market, there's a lot out there for men to kind of help with those issues in performance, right?
Yes.
But for women who might be struggling with, lack of desire due to, well, we covered stress, but maybe also, it's painful. There's hormones in effect. There's other things going on. I don't feel like there's as much out there for women, especially at a certain time of life. Can you speak a little bit to hormones and painful sex and things that keep women's desire kind of low, and maybe that little imbalance between men and women in that department?
Yeah, absolutely. Big topic, huge. And I think, yes, there is more than there used to be. We're hearing about it more, both for men and women. You're absolutely correct. Men have desire concerns too. They don't like to talk about them. Why? For many reasons. One of which is that the stereotype is that men always want sex more than women, that if you don't want sex all the time, there's something wrong with you. That is not true. It is 100% not true, just as much as it is not true for women. If they don't want sex all the time, there's something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with you. There might be some things that we need to focus on, right? There might be some physical issues. I always want people to go get checked medically, get a physical, check your hormones. Men and women need to be doing this. And it's much earlier than you think it is. It can start in your 20s. And
Mm.
so I don't want anybody to think that you have to wait till you're perimenopausal or postmenopausal to figure out what your hormones are doing to you, because they might be doing something right now. And it's not just females. And so it's a huge importance to me as we begin sex therapy work that I know what's going on with you internally and that you have an idea of it. And the truth is, a lot of doctors, and I have doctors all over in my life, and I can say this with confidence, a lot of doctors don't know about hormones. They just don't. And they're getting better. But for the longest time, it's not a hormone problem if you're not postmenopausal or perimenopausal. And perimenopausal, actually, a lot of times for the longest time, it was just waiting till you were, in menopause to start looking at this. Perimenopausal can wreak havoc too. Um, but it's important to understand that there's a huge physical piece to this. The other piece of it, though, is that sex isn't just physical, it's emotional.
Mm.
And so, when we talked early on about here are all the things that could be contributing to problems, concerns in your intimacy or your sex life, we got to kind of go all over the place for that. Uh, you know, how do y'all communicate in general? Before we start talking about, Do you use the word vulva? We need to figure out, do you talk about what's going on in your day? Are you
Yeah.
emotionally
Yeah.
connected,
Hmm.
right? Because it's about feeling safe. It's about feeling seen. Seen and heard is a big one. And you want to feel chosen and appreciated by your partner. These things directly relate to desire, men and women.
Mm.
Absolutely. And that could be a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, I've heard a friend say, like, he has no idea how much more I would want,
Oh yeah.
well, how much more desire I would have if he took out the trash. Like, if
Oh,
he just did,
acts of service, baby. Yes.
But I say it's funny, but it's true. Like,
Yeah.
if you just hold up these little areas of the relationship, I'm going to like love, like it's going to not love you more, but the attraction might be there a little more.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Um,
it's in and,
So,
I know that it's most people have probably heard about the love languages. There's so
mhm.
much relevance there. I love the fact that that was researched and written because, um, you know, the love language is essentially and I don't necessarily need to get into it, but just basically how do I feel loved? What works for me, right? And there's these 5 different areas and it's a little quiz. It's a book by Gary Chapman. It's a great book. But the truth is, it's not necessarily about knowing exactly your love language and knowing your partners. The real connection is found in that intentionality, right? If I know that you're, for example, an acts of service partner, right? Me
right.
taking out the trash, me taking something off your to-do list, me showing up, and doing something around our home is how you feel seen, right? And that's typical of new mothers, to be real honest, right? Your love language may have been gifts right up until you had kids, and now if he could take something off your list or she could take out change a diaper, it's a game changer, right? And
Mm.
so it's important for you to understand that as we transition through our life, our love languages change too. And
You know,
yeah.
I love that you brought up love languages because I had actually never heard this concept until a couple of years ago. And I was talking to a friend of mine and I was saying that, the uh, guy that I was dating at the time had cleaned out my garage, like organized it, cleaned it. And it was literally like, I said, it's the best Christmas present anybody could ever give me
Oh yeah.
because every day I get into my car in a clean garage, organized. I know where to find stuff. And she said that to me. She said, "Oh, well, your love language is, acts of service, apparently." And I had never heard of this concept. But
Yeah.
it's true. By the way, anybody that I'm going to date in the future should know that if you clean out my
Yeah.
garage, key to my heart.
The
Yeah.
sexy time is coming. Yeah. No, it's true.
Sexy.
It's a clean garage is sexy. But the truth is it's just about learning who you are. And so, going back to that, not just physical, it's emotional. It's because you were seen,
Yeah.
right? You felt
Right.
seen. This is me. And you are trying to connect with me in a way that perhaps is not the way that you want to be connected with. And that's what I mean by
Hmm.
intentionality, right? I have to
Yeah.
move outside of my box, closer to yours to connect with you. And we all love that.
Hmm.
100% of the
Erin,
time.
Yeah.
what do you
Yeah.
do when partners are truly on different pages, right? Like maybe in the beginning, and maybe this happens a lot, right? In the beginning, things are great. The relationship starts. You're a little younger, no kids. You're having, let's just say, uh, more frequent sex, right? Because
Sure.
we're not going to say
Yeah.
normal or more frequent sex, and then life stress, kids, all these things come into the equation, but maybe one partner is still like gung ho and the other one's just like, no, not interested. What happens when the balance tips in a relationship?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's pretty common, right? Again, I talked about those life transitions. Everybody's life is going to change. Every relationship is going to change. We talk about it being the honeymoon phase versus not the honeymoon phase. And I hate that because you can stay honeymoon phase, right? It's about connection. You don't have to have the same amount of sex for it to not be a honeymoon phase. You can be connected to each other in different ways. And so, really, it's about looking at how are we debuting now. And I was in it's probably been 6 months or so. I was in a conference where I was talking to somebody, and this was about menopause and sex, but it applies here. And she was talking about how every time our life changes, we need a new sexual debut, right?
Huh.
Meaning we have to pay attention to who we are now. The same sex that we had when we were 20, you're going to be disappointed if that's what you're looking for when you're 50. Not because it's worse, because it's different. Your body's different, your mind is different, your history, your experiences, everything's different, which is not bad necessarily, but you're going to have to figure out, okay, what do I need now? What does my body need now? How do I respond now? Same thing goes with that energy of, God, we're really different than we used to be. That could be celebrated. And you could look at, okay, what's our debut now? Or you can say, we used to be good and now we're terrible. Um, the reason that's the case, 9 times out of 10, is because the work stopped, right? Work never stops in a relationship. It never stops with your sexual or intimate lives. It changes, and work isn't necessarily hard. It's just constant. It's people unfortunately show up, and I don't know what the statistic is anymore. It used to be 7 years, right? 7 years after the problem starts, they knock on my door. That's a long
Mm.
time to create some
That's a long
negative
time.
patterns. It's
Yeah,
a long
Yeah.
time.
exactly.
And that used to be kind of the median. Like, I don't know the average of when people show up because I can easily say it's sometimes longer. But, if you
When
wait
they're
7 years,
when they're that deep into the issue, how do you get
right.
them out? You know?
You can. They get themselves out, right? I just help guide that experience for them, but sometimes it's just a new set of tools that they need. They need to learn how to communicate. So, how do you do it? You do it by connecting those dots for them. And, a big part of the work that I do is helping people take ownership over what is theirs and also what is not theirs. And here is how I've contributed to the last 7 years. Whoopsies, right? And so now I'm going to
Mhm.
have to learn new behavior, which is very hard. It's very doable and very difficult for us, creatures of habit. But if both of you are working together, again, it goes back to that intentionality. I like to see that you're trying to meet me somewhere, that is new. Easier said than done, but that's essentially what it.
Is it like you have to reestablish the intimacy?
Yes.
Is that part of it?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that intimacy connection is the precursor to the sex connection.
Yeah.
That you've got to have the one before you really have meaningful
A
sex.
and doesn't Esther Perel say that means into me, see?
Into me, see, I love Esther.
Right?
Yes.
Ah.
Yes. I mean, absolutely. It's that emotional part that kind of lends itself to the physical intimacy. The difficult part is that typically the person who needs that emotional connection first is partnered with somebody who connects through the physical sex, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's not uncommon and it's okay. It just means that both of you will need to be heard differently. What is it that I need, right? And it's not the chicken or the egg. It's not like, okay, well, you start and then their needs will be met and then they can meet yours. We don't operate like that, right? We need to feel that energy in order to provide the energy and to change. And so it's kind of letting go of that comparison of the past versions of the relationship and how you performed and behaved and just saying, okay, let's debut as something new. We both want increased intimacy. Okay. So now let's define that for each other. This is what I see as intimate. That's what you see as intimate. And then, sometimes it's a lot of fun in the sessions trying to figure out, okay, so what does this look like on the daily basis, right? How do we
Mhm.
get everybody's needs met at once? Which is not possible, but
S
working at the same time.
Yeah. So if let's say you're in a situation where, again, men kind of have these great pills if things aren't working to help them out. Now, say a woman is experiencing one of the things perhaps that's keeping her from, even if there's good intimacy, from wanting to have sex, is there could be pain, or it could be difficult to reach orgasm for, different reasons. That there is no pill for right now, right? So, what do you do in those cases? Like, and that can happen at almost any age. Like you said, maybe it's related to hormones. But what do you do when there might even be a desire, but it's just painful? Or for women who say, like, I have a lot of trouble reaching orgasm.
Yeah, which is common, and the truth is many intimacy struggles are surprisingly solvable, even with pain disorders, which are very important to address and to stop sex where it is painful, at least for the time being, right? Because what happens is when your physical body is hurting, then it rewires your brain to think that sex is bad, intimacy is bad, all touch is bad, especially if the way that you're relating to your partner means that you think, if I even so much as look their direction, then they're going to think that I want to have sex. So all of it goes off the table. Um, so the first thing that is important is to understand, how do you separate physical intimacy from sex, especially when there's pain, right? How
Mhm.
can I enjoy physical touch while I work out or work on my pain? And for some people, that means, um, we work on something called sensate focus, which is an exercise that can kind of um, help you relearn and become more intimate with the physical body, both non sexual and sexual. That's a beautiful exercise and treatment that I use quite a bit. But sometimes it's just learning to separate those two things, that sex and physical touch. And of course, that's not negating the fact that there's true physical pain that has to be worked on. And so sometimes that's a me thing. Sometimes I send to um, a wonderful pelvic floor specialist for women. Sometimes it's a medical procedure. So it really just depends on what that concern is. But
But it's solvable. It can be
it
solvable.
can be, absolutely, and I want people to know that, especially women. The problem is it has to be communicated about, right? And so a lot of
Mhm.
times women think that pain is normal, and no, it's not.
I
That's
think that's Yeah, I think that that's so true. First of all, I do hear that a lot from my friends that they have no desire. It hurts, maybe as they age. It's just you know things that eased the process don't aren't there anymore, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
But but one of the things that I also hear about, or is when if if the woman or the man is not feeling it, the other partner um, feels rejected,
Hmm.
and that hurt then sort of festers within the relationship. And I'm just curious if you run across a lot of issues with couples where there's some rejection struggles in their relationship.
Absolutely. Rejection is kind of at the foundation of shame and a lack of communication between people. We don't like to feel rejected as human beings. And the way that we personalize sex differs. So it's always personal, right? What our partners say to us or don't say to us or respond to us is personal. Why is it? Because it is so vulnerable. Uh, our sexuality is a vulnerable piece of us. And I think that we care deeply about what others think of us, even those that say they don't care, right? You tend to care, especially in a healthy, satisfying relationship. You tend to care what your partner thinks. And if you are feeling rejected, well, we stop trying, right? Because it's self-preservation. I don't want to feel rejected, so I'm not going to put myself out there. it's also really hard to say that to somebody. I'm feeling rejected. I'm feeling disappointed. My expectation is that I'm loved unconditionally, or or that my body is something that is important to you as well. And I feel like none of that exists. It's hard to say that to somebody's face. And so what happens is you just shut down and you go your separate ways. And that's male or female. Absolutely. And a lot of times that's very unspoken. When I have a heterosexual couple in my office, and the female is saying it's just a low desire thing, right? It's not you, it's me. I'm sorry. Well, that's really hard to hear. But also, if it's not spoken and it just stops happening, uh, sometimes that client feels like, okay, well, I can read between the lines, right? You say it's not me, but nothing's happening. There's no physical
Mhm.
touch. There's no anything. And so then you can kind of get into, well, I feel like if I show any um, attraction or physical touch, that then you're going to think that I want sex and I don't want sex. It sounds simple, but those things never come out of their mouths. And so everybody's just left assuming that they're rejected.
Mm. That's a tough spot to be in,
It's a
right?
very tough
Like,
spot to be in, and so
yeah.
sometimes what it is it's just that communication, right? We just wanna feel
Yeah.
seen and heard. "Oh my gosh, I'm not
I
trying to reject you. Are you kidding? I miss our touches. I miss cuddling. I miss that, but I don't want you
yeah.
to think that, that I'm in the mood
How
for
how
sex."
often how often does the therapy really help versus, like, maybe the desire is just gone at that point? Like, we're 7 years in,
Yeah.
there's no getting it back, or, like, what's sort of the percentage of we got something back versus it kinda we waited too long or it just wasn't gonna happen?
I mean, I feel like that's a hard it depends question,
Yeah.
because it depends on how far gone you are. I like to believe the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And so if you're still arguing or if you're still trying to learn how to communicate, I'd say you got more of a chance than if your partner dragged you into therapy and you're done, right? You tried and tried and tried, and now that you're kind of done. I'm very transparent in the way that I work in my office. So if I feel that or observe that, I say that because sometimes
Mm.
you need other people to say it for you. Um, Here's what I'm looking at you guys. I don't see a lot of energy for change. Do you think you're done? Right? Do you think that this is, and some people are like, yeah, I think I am, right? But other people, if you've got that energy and you've got that fight in you, there's a lot of good that can come from it. I mean, I'd always say try. But the other piece of it is you have to recognize your own energy level for change, right? Do you see capability in your partner of being able to hear you in a different way? Do you feel your own capability in communicating differently, showing up differently? So those are big, important general questions that kind of give me an idea of is there a chance?
And let's say that, ultimately, you can't overcome you know, being on a different page with your
Hmm.
partner or something like that. There's still value for, individuals within that relationship to come and talk to you because it brings them closer to understanding what their own needs are, whether they stay in that relationship or move on to another relationship. Is that right?
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, I think self discovery extends itself into every part of our lives. There's always something to know about yourself that you didn't before. I think that's when therapy becomes kind of fun, dare I say. I think that it's, being able to learn something about who you are that you didn't know before doesn't take a relationship to do that. We're sexual beings as individuals. Your sexuality
Mhm.
came with you into a relationship. So I don't want anyone to think that they need a relationship to be sexual. or to honor their bodies or to be proud of who they are. That's a huge part of even couples therapy, to be real honest. Relational therapy is I want to make sure that you are honoring who you are, what your body's capable of, what your body has done for you. Body image is a whole different ballgame in terms of what it brings to a relationship. You've got to be good with who you are to have really good sex. It's hard to have good sex if you don't like
If
what
you
you're
don't
bringing
like
to the
yourself.
table.
Yeah, right. That makes perfect sense. And you did mention something, Erin, that I want to make sure we touch on, which is, long-term relationships with same-sex couples.
Uh-huh.
How does that vary? What percent of, like, not more, but do you work with same-sex couples as well?
Uh-huh.
Are the issues different? Are they similar?
I mean, of course, there's different issues, but there's so much similarity because we're human beings and human beings are sexual. So sometimes the issue of shame and rejection looks different. A lot of what they're bringing into the relationship can make a huge difference. Their coming out experience makes a big difference, and so that's something to honor and hear and have them share that with one another. Obviously, if they haven't, because um, it's just like with heterosexual couples. You either know a lot about your sexual past and you communicate about it, or it's not something you communicate about. Either way, it makes a difference in terms of who
Mm.
you are. So, but more so, it's very important that that's honored and heard. But yeah, I mean, desire issues span the globe. I mean, it's something that you really have to look at and take on as an individual case. But you want to be mindful of different issues, right? And
Mhm.
absolutely, I same sex couples are in and out of my office all the time, and makes no difference to me. I think it's just about that individual experience is so important to me.
Is there an expiration date on sex? I mean, can you
No.
just, inquiring minds want to
Yeah,
know.
no, no, there's not. Not up until you don't wanna have sex anymore. That's your expiration date, right? So if you wanna be
It's
having sex, then you can figure out a way to do it. And the other piece of that is to know that sex looks different for everybody. So, penetrative sex sometimes has an expiration date depending on the capability of your body or the interest of your body and mind in that. But sex can be defined in so many different ways in terms of how you experience sexuality and sexual touch. So no, there's no expiration date on that. Absolutely not. In fact, there's statistics that show as you age, that energy can come back very easily. Some of the,
Well,
most sexual people that I have in my office are 55 and above, 65 and above. So,
I was gonna say that because everybody's like, "Oh, it's in your youth, it's in your youth." I'm like,
no.
"I disagree."
There's good for you. I'm glad.
yeah.
Preach it. It matters. It matters. I think that it also has to do with how you take care of your hormones. Hormones
Yeah,
are
that's
directly related
Mhm.
to our sexual energy. And so people that don't take care of their hormones or think that they don't matter, well, they do. And some people have more of a depletion than others, but everybody's going to have a depletion. And so, it's about what do I want out of the, second part of my debut, right? What do I want out of my 60s and 70s and 80s? And I think it's important for you to kind of set those goals for yourself and then figure out, okay, am I having lubrication issues? Am I having penetrative sex concerns with my partner? What are the concerns? Is it a me thing? Is it a them thing? Is it, what do I need to figure out? How can we communicate about it? And then let's go find out how to fix it, right? Or how to make it
yeah.
different and better. So no, there is a lull statistically in our 30s with sex, which makes perfect sense to me. Usually your stress is one of your higher areas of stress in life is in your 30s. You're building a career, you're potentially building a family, you're raising kids. Kids don't care about your sex life, so they don't try to help you with that. And, those things get in the way. Again, goes back to that stress piece, right? Wherever you can find
Mhm.
stress, you can typically find lower desire.
Makes perfect sense. It's very interesting. And one last question about like what you're hearing behind
Yeah.
the closed doors, let's say, but not really closed. So, women who have you had many women who have come to you who have said like, "I've never been able to orgasm,"
Yeah.
and is that the case, or is it more of is that a physical thing, or is it a mental thing, or is it both? It just maybe an operational thing. Uh, Is that true that some women can't?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Yes. Okay.
When I was doing my dissertation work, which was on female sexual well-being, sexual satisfaction, at that point, percentages were in the 30 percentile range of women who don't know if they've ever orgasmed, which is high.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in my opinion, it's high because that means at least 30%, 3 out of 10 women don't know that about their bodies, don't know what it feels like, don't know if that's something that, has ever happened to them. Um, Chances are good if it's happened to you, you know. Um, it's great. I think it's important for women to understand that powerful role in their bodies. And so the second part of that is what is that about? It can be a psychological block. It can be, hey, I haven't really ever been stimulated in a way that makes sense for my body, because there's different ways to orgasm. And so a lot of it, and then the other part of it that again creeps back in is that's not a part of my body that I choose to focus on, right? So I learned that touching my body is not healthy or bad or dirty or shameful. So I actually don't even know my own anatomy. I don't know what works for me. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what it feels like. And sometimes it's paired with, and sex is, especially in heterosexual couples, for the pleasure of my spouse, right?
Mm,
As long as my partner can orgasm, climax, feel pleasure, then my job here is done. And so
mm,
what happens is there's not a focus on the female orgasm. So how on earth would you know if you have or focused on, that doesn't work for me? Here is what works better for me, right? Does a woman know where her clitoris is?
mm.
Do they know what that would
Mm-hmm.
feel like? These are things that I don't take for granted when I'm talking to someone new.
Well, be because in the movies, it's still like it has to be the penetrative orgasm,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like
Oh
that's
yeah.
all there is,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
right? And
in heterosexual couples that you see on the big screen, right?
yeah, that's
He
it.
orgasm, he climaxes, they roll over, and it's all done.
Yeah,
Perfect,
yeah,
great.
yeah.
And so that's problematic, right? Because that's ingrained in how we think of a positive sexual experience sometimes, which is just so damaging,
Mhm.
to female sexuality. So, yeah, so sometimes it's psychoeducational at the beginning of a session like that, and I will say, go home and take a look in the mirror, see what you think, right? And you need to
Yeah.
know. How on earth could you have somebody else pleasure you if you don't know your own anatomy and pleasure system? And so, yeah, it's so important. It's so important, and shame is all over that. Shame is all over that.
And I also think too, I mean, to go back to your movie reference,
Yeah.
timing is not exactly the same for men
No.
and women.
Nope.
And I think like, I mean, it just isn't. I mean, men have a, specific timing. And I think it just takes women a little bit longer to really get there. And so that's a component of it too.
It can. It can. It can work the other way around where a woman can climax and orgasm in the first 30 seconds if touched appropriately. And there's nothing wrong with that either. right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's, I've done work on multi-orgasmic experiences, teaching people how to orgasm multiple times. There's so much to learn with that, and it's so fun to see people kind of come into themselves and realize, oh, I can continue my pleasure experience in sex even after my partner is climaxed? Wait, what? That feels
Mhm.
selfish. It feels selfish. What? No, right? It's here are your needs, here are my needs, here are my desires, here are my turnoffs. Let's talk about all of it and create a sexual experience that's fun and safe and makes me feel seen as a partner. Um, there's a whole lot of it, especially for women, in taking care of the pleasure of my partner. And, um, and that's difficult, and that's difficult in heterosexual couples, same-sex couples. It's a dynamic that exists in our culture. And so it's really important to recognize, "Hey, you matter too. You matter too. I
I
want you to
love
take
that
up space."
concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
I
that.
love that. That you're not being selfish, right? That
No.
this is what I need, and I love that
Yeah, and
concept. That's
really,
important.
the other thing you'll hear me say a lot in my sessions is stop having bad sex. Stop having bad sex. Bad sex is anything that is not obviously consensual or is painful or is not completely pleasurable for you. Don't have it, because the more you have it, the more your brain thinks this is my norm. This is all I can accept. This is all I can expect. Don't have bad sex. Wait and have good sex. And good sex is whatever you define it to be. Um, and so that's fun when people, okay, we're going to take our bad sex and we're going to put it over here. And now we're going to figure out what good sex looks like. And so those sessions are just a blast to see people kind of come into their own and ask for what they want, and say what they don't want. And a silly example of this that I'll just give real quickly is one that's not even sexual. I was working with a couple on their turn-ons and turn-offs, and what's their favorite position, and what's something that they'd like to never do again. And a woman said, "Oh my God, you know what's the biggest turn-off? When you don't brush your teeth. I don't want to kiss you. I don't want to be physical with you with stinky breath." She was like, "It's a game
Mhm.
changer for me. I don't like it. And I didn't want to say anything to
Wow.
you." Uh, and that feels silly, but it is so significant because that set the mood for her for their whole
Mhm.
sexual experience. She was thinking, "Oh my God, don't kiss me, don't kiss me, don't kiss me." She was in her head,
Mhm.
right? Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so helping people explore even the things that feel non-sexual in regards to their desire is important.
Oh, Erin, this conversation has been amazing. I've learned so much. I've learned about the impact of hormones throughout the ages, from every age, starting much earlier than we think, the
Yes.
impact of hormones on sexual pleasure and sexual experience. That if you're feeling pain, stop. Don't bad sex is not good sex. So stop there and kind of figure out what might be happening. And that the intimacy and our love languages matter so much to our experiences, that there's nothing that's really there's nothing wrong with you, right? Like
No.
there's nothing typical. Like there's no right wrong here. It's just everything's a little bit different, and everyone's a little different, every relationship's a little different. um and but it does sound like that, working with someone like you, and with you specifically in this case, that there's possibility to like find that desire again,
Yes.
and bring it back. And there could be things stopping it that are silly, like you just mentioned, right? Like it could be bad breath
Brush
that
your
went
teeth.
unspoken for many years.
It's true.
um, so I just want to ask, before we ask a question that we'd like to ask all our guests before they leave, I just want to ask if there are any resources that you think are worth sharing with everyone. I know, first we'd love to push everybody to you, but I know you're in Texas and you can't work with everybody. So to that person who's thinking, the desire in a relationship is just not there right now, and I really love to speak to Erin. What are resources you can point them to if they're not in Texas?
Well, the first resource that I think is important is, you know, find a therapist that fits for you. Obviously, I think that some therapists are more qualified than others to do sex therapy. AASECT, AASECT, is the American Association of Sexual Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. Their website is phenomenal. It's a national website, and you can find certified counselors, educators, and therapists on there. But they also have wonderful resources. So articles, books, I think they even have, chat rooms and things like that where you can get information, not necessarily AOL type chat rooms, but kind of like a question answer type of situation where you can ask questions that you have. It's a wonderful national resource just for looking for therapists who are trained and can be helpful in this area. But also, you don't have to be certified to be knowledgeable in this area. And I think so if you have a great therapist that you already know, talk to them about this, because any good therapist that doesn't know something is going to research it and they're going to point you in the right direction. But the other piece of it is, there's books out there, there's podcasts, there's all kinds of seminars that you can look up. Two of my favorite books that I always like to give shout outs to, they're everybody's favorite books, but anything by Emily Nagoski, Come As You Are, is one of my favorite go-tos. I have clients read that. Some of it is technical, but so much of it is, um, God, it's just so rich in knowledge with things that people don't typically know about themselves, or you know their sexuality, or relational pieces. And then anything Esther Perel touches is gold to me. Um, I think Mating in Captivity is a really great one, especially for couples who are feeling stuck and not really sure where to go. So those are my two favorites. But yeah, I mean, I think, it's becoming more typical to hear about these concerns. People are finally tired enough of feeling alone. So, I don't know that you Google things and find your best work, but
Yeah.
there's so many people out there talking about it now. So I think what you can do is Google help, right? Where could I go to for this information? But yeah, those books, they're chef's kiss. And then podcast, therapist. Honestly, I will also say your partner. Talk, right? If it's something that feels awkward, talk outside of the bedroom. Use curiosity instead of blame. These kinds of things.
Ooh,
Sometimes we have these tools, we just don't know how to use them. Um, Tell somebody what's going on. They might have an idea too of how to help.
I love that. And we will absolutely include all of those resources in the show notes. So thank you for sharing that.
Awesome, sure.
So, Michelle, do you want me to ask the question
yes,
or?
please do it. Yes.
So, so we always ask our guests, essentially one of two questions, but for um, if you were to go back and talk to your younger self, what would be the thing that you would tell your younger self?
Mm, so many things. I wish we could have coffee some days. Um, Today it would be to be proud. Be proud of who you are. Um, be kind. Be kind to yourself, that it's gonna be okay. I have on the back of my phone, I have a sticker that says, "Everything will probably be okay." It's it's realistic. Um, and that proudness kind of begins to formulate the direction that you're gonna take in life, and it doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean that you're always kind, always right, always good. It just means do things with your whole heart. Because especially, younger self, I'm thinking teens, there's so much self-doubt in there, and it can follow you on accident. And so if we can choose to be proud of who we are now, man, it makes our life a little bit easier as we get older.
It's awesome.
Great advice. Great advice.
Erin, thank you so much. This was I hope you will come back again because I think we've only touched the tip of the iceberg here.
Would love to. Yes, we have. Very tip, very tip. No pun intended. Ha
And-
ha. Yeah.
and-
There's a little bit of real Erin there.
I love that real Erin.
But there's just so much to talk about. It's
Right.
fun. Yeah.
And if somebody is in Texas, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can reach out to me on my website, erinrossphd.com. And from there, you can shoot me an email or get in touch with me there. I have a private practice in town. I speak all over town. So my website's the easiest one, and that will get sent straight to me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so
There we go.
much.
There's our end bell.
That was our
Ding ding.
That was our alarm there.
Erin, thank you so much. This was such a rich and interesting conversation. So
Good. I'm
It's
glad.
fun.
Thank you so much for having me. Obviously, I can talk my own head off with this topic, but I always appreciate the opportunity to share and hopefully normalize some of these things for other people.
I can tell why people will be I can see that people would be comfortable with you
Oh,
and probably do great work with you. So
very kind.
thank you so much, and hopefully we'll come back again. And we really enjoyed having you on Spark Me.
Thanks. Same.